As I look out on the sea of familiar chairs, get it? I am reminded of three of the most luxurious of perks of what I've chosen to do with my life. One, I get to pause every once in a while and pay tribute to an artist or a minister or just a person, place, or thing that has molded the path of my life. I get to take pot shots at people I don't like. And lastly, I get to tell riveting stories of my torrid past with the hopes of either illuminating, encouraging, discouraging, or glorifying God, or, well, just recording a story so I can say that these videos are my memoirs to the people who say, oh, you should write a book. Oh, you should write it. I just did. I'm dictating my book right now. But for tonight's story, it seems appropriate that I'm looking out at an empty room, save for a couple people. And if I were to say, wow, I'm really glad that's the case, I'd be a big fat liar. But I will say, for tonight, it is appropriate. I am the child of a man who claims otherwise, but I know was a big gambler. And my whole childhood, I went to Las Vegas every weekend. And for some reason, and now I understand why, because I know what happens with big gamblers, we always had the best tables for shows. And I mean, I saw Elvis a good 30 times, and my arm was on the stage, man. And I've seen some of the biggest names in show business. But I also went backstage and met some of the biggest names in show business. Even if I had to climb on that table, crawl under the curtain, and run back to the dressing room and speak some kind of weird gibberish to Dionne Warwick that even she thought was funny before security came and dragged me out. But I did get around, and I met a lot of these people. I've seen some of the biggest names in showbiz. And I've seen some of the biggest names in showbiz in their up times and in their down times. I saw Elvis in the end of his up time and certainly in the beginning of his downtime. I saw Elvis in shape, and I saw fat Elvis. Not a lot of people really can say that. I've seen performers walk out drunk. I've seen performers fall. I prayed once that a performer would fall, and they did, and now we're friends on Facebook, and I'm debating whether or not I'm going to tell her that I might have had something to do with that. And I've seen performers get mad at their audience. I've seen performers get mad at their sound guy. I've seen performers storm off stage. I've seen performers forget the words. I saw Julie Andrews perform, and I don't know anybody that can say that. But I saw Julie Andrews in concert, and she came out on stage for the opening song, and her mic didn't work. And they didn't get it resolved for the entire length of the opening song. So she stood out there having no microphone. Fascinating. I thank God throughout my life made sure I got an education that I would have an unlimited resource of memory of what I've seen performers do, what I've heard performers say, and how it affected me at the time, so that I would think twice about what I said and did. And given what I have said and done, you can imagine what I haven't said and done. This was one of those days where I really thought, gosh, if I just like wrote my sermons out, I might actually cover everything that was going through my head. But I don't do that, so I'm really, really trusting in Jesus' name, the Holy Spirit, to really call to mind everything I want to say in less than 2 hours. But I promise it'll be interesting. In the early 1980s, I was barely 18, and if you're struggling with the math, that makes me 30 right now. Okay. And I was the lead singer of a premier Los Angeles Hollywood punk rock band called Jerry's Kids, and that was my ticket everywhere. I could walk into any venue and I would get free drinks, even though I was underage. I could go in the venues when I was underage. And people respected me, people were nice to me, and there was a venue on Sunset Boulevard called the Club Lingerie, and the Club Lingerie was owned by a man named Brendan Mullen, and the people in punk rock who will hear this, people in rock and roll who hear this will already be rolling their eyes that I even have to explain, but for the people in TV land who may not know, Brendan started The Mask, which was the only punk rock club in Hollywood in the beginning. It was a vacated building that had no anything in it. It didn't have power, it didn't have running water, bands had to bring their own generators. That's where Hollywood punk rock was born. And he's the one who made it possible. And I'm not really sure what that means, because I'm not sure he really owned the building, but we won't say anything. But he really was the face of Hollywood punk rock. He was the one that gave space for all the bands to rehearse. He's the one who made it possible. And then, you know, he moved on and he started this amazing, classy venue. And on a Monday night, I had nothing to do, and I drove myself to Club Lingerie to just have someplace cool to go. The place was empty, much like tonight. And because I was who I was sitting at the bar having beers, and all of a sudden the band came out to play. And I heard, you know, this amazing Cracker Jack blues band playing. I was like, oh, this is a very good band. And then the singer came out, and it was this really unattractive, amazingly overweight black blues singer. I mean, she was already sweating when she got to the stage. So of course that got my attention, because you know, we all know that the big fat black blues singers have great voices. Call me racist, but I was 18 and this is what was going through my head. She opened her mouth. She opened her mouth, and I just said the word. She opened her mouth, and I have chills on my chills on my chills. Did I mention I've seen Elvis 30 times already? I only say that because that impresses other people. I wasn't impressed, but you know, I'm of a different generation. I was impressed that evening by this big, fat, sweaty blues singer that nobody came to see. It reminded me of Elvis. Not Elvis himself, because, like for everybody, Elvis is an enigma to me. To most people he's an enigma in other ways. To me he's an enigma because I don't really know what you people saw in him. But I understand he had pretty eyes, I get it. But you know, some of us demand more from our singers. You know, like, I don't know, talent and that's, you know, something like that. But now the first time I saw Elvis, you know, it was a great show. But then he stopped to like wipe his sweat and give away his scarves to ladies in the audience, and I was like, okay, what do I get? You know, is he going to give me candy? You know what I'm saying? I didn't get it. I didn't get it. I mean, I've matured. I kind of get it, but I don't get it. But, you know, back in the day of Elvis, I was a little kid, and Elvis played the International Hotel, which is now, I believe, the Hilton. And he would, he had the whole top floor was his, and that was his home, when he was performing there. And there was a fat, black, sweaty blues guitar player who took up the lounge downstairs. Some guy named B.B. King. And B.B. King would rehearse every single day in that lounge. Every single day he'd rehearse in that lounge. I need to tell you, you get Steve Vai, you get Slash, and you get Eddie Van Halen in here, and their jaws will drop at the thought that B.B. King was practicing every day when he was performing that night in the lounge. But he was in the little piddly lounge practicing, and Elvis was upstairs recuperating from his evening of debauchery. B.B. King left his door open, and anyone who wanted to come in and watch him rehearse were allowed to come in. So I would go in every single day and watch B.B. King rehearse. Every single day I was in Vegas, that B.B. King was there, I went, even if I took a cab from a different hotel, to watch him rehearse. And one day he says to me, he says, "Where are you supposed to be?" And I said, "Well, I'm supposed to be at the youth hotel." And the youth hotel was the child care thing that they had at the International Hotel. And if the parents worked it out, you could sign yourself in and out. And my parents let me sign myself in and out. And he goes, "So your parents think you're at the youth hotel and you're in the lounge with me?" And I said, "Yes." And he goes, "Might I ask why?" And I said, "The guy upstairs is a hack. You, sir, are the king." And he was like, "Oh, wow, that's funny coming from a kid." And he goes, "Why do you say that?" He goes, "Yeah, it was very sweet, of course." He goes, "But why do you say that?" And I said, "Because you're in here practicing. And you're perfect already. But that's not good enough for you because you don't do it for what he gets for what he does. You do it because you can't separate yourself from what you're doing." And he goes, "You're a musician, what do you play?" And I told him. And how many people could say, when I was a kid, I was friends with B.B. King. This was during B.B. King's downtime, by the way. This is after he had been famous once, and before, he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. This is during the period of time where he had to play downstairs in a hotel because Elvis threw him a bone. Because Elvis threw him a bone. And while B.B. King would stop me from what I'm about to say, the truth is Elvis stole everything he did from people like B.B. King. And that's historically accurate. That's not me just, being pissy. But every song that you guys heard of Elvis's came from somewhere else. Go online and listen to Hound Dog. Listen to what Hound Dog used to be when it was owned by black people. But it was the time to take what was black and make it white and make a lot of money off of it and forget where it came from. And I was reminded of this when I was sitting and watching Etta James in a room full of people less than the fingers on my hand, including me and the bartender. And during her performance, she said, "I'm going to do a little song right now that most of you," who's she talking to? I'm over here by the bar. I mean, I didn't even see humans that she was addressing. She was talking to an empty room. A lot of times bands do this when they're about to go on a big tour. That was not the case here. This was it. And she said, "I'm going to do a little song that a lot of you don't know that I wrote because I never really got credit for it. And some bitch named Janis Joplin made a shitload of money off of me, and, well, hello, I'm alive. And she's saying, break another bit of my heart now, baby. Break another piece of my heart now, baby. And it's true. Etta James was a co-writer on that song. That's historically accurate. Take from the black, give it to the white, make a ton of money, and forget where it came from. That's a huge hit. That's a huge hit. That was a bigger hit than that little song that people always talk about, At Last. That was never a big hit for Etta James. It wasn't. It was a hit, but you know, it wasn't a big hit. Something's Got a Hold on Me was a bigger hit for Etta James. But she didn't write either of those. So she lived and worked and thrived and became an icon at a time where she was destined to die dirt poor for it, no matter how much success she had. I sat in an empty room and I watched what I thought was one of the greatest performers in history. And I was an expert by the age of 18. I was a hot commodity in Los Angeles. The LA Weekly wrote of me saying that I was the best singer, the best performer to emerge from Los Angeles since Jim Morrison. And I sat there and I watched someone I'd never heard of. I had no idea who she was. I didn't know her name. Some blues band I was watching. Remember that? I didn't know who was playing. There's no marquee. They come out and they start playing and I'm like, who is this crazy woman who claims to write a Janis Joplin song? And I recognize a couple of the songs, but blues bands do covers. But I watched a workhorse in action. I watched the real deal. And I've seen the real deal. I think Tina Turner's the real deal. I think Liza Minnelli's the real deal. You watch these people perform, and they're not done yet. They're not done when the show's over. They're not done. They have work to do. They're going to come back and do it again, and they're going to keep doing it because it's in them to do it. And of course, you know, B.B. King. But fat, black, sweaty chick. Amazing voice. I mean, I don't even know. I wouldn't even know how to explain it except smoky, husky, just impossible to think about anything while that was going on. And then there was this energy, this performance, this, you know, it wasn't exactly dancing. It was this relationship to the rhythm that was primal and threatening in nature. It was fantastic. And the owner of the club showed up and he walked by me and he said hi. And I go, this is a great band, who are they? And he looked at me and he goes, that's Etta James. I went, you're kidding. And he goes, well, what were you thinking? And I said, you don't want to know what I was thinking. He goes, what, you think I just found some great blues band with some fat, black, sweaty chick in it? And I said, that's exactly what I thought. I thought they were just some house band or something, you know? And he goes, you know, the house bands you're going to find all over America were legends once. And she performed at this club every Monday night. And I went back every Monday night until she wasn't there anymore. And it never changed. It never changed. Did I meet Etta James? I don't even know if I would call our exchange as, yeah, I guess so. I guess I met Etta James. You know, I guess I said, you're amazing, and she told me to piss off, or something like that. This was not a nice person. This was not a happy person. This was not a sober person. This was just an amazing talent. And I have no comment on you know, where Etta James is today, or I have no comment on what her private life was, or, I mean, you can read about it on Wikipedia. You know, there's really very little good news in the story of Etta James. But what I can say is, to a budding young artist, I had an education of a lifetime. Because I saw a phenomenal performer ignore the emptiness of the room. Before I found out who they were. And that was just like getting clobbered between the eyes. I was like, you know, imagine, you know, I go to some club one night and there's this great torch singer and she's singing her guts out and there's nobody in the room. And I find out it's Judy Garland, you know, a week before she died. I mean, you know, this is what happens to performers. This is what happens. This, you know, maybe they come back. B.B. King came back. Etta James. We'll get there. But I was a young man. I was being courted by record companies. I was being written about in the media. I was living the dream. And I've seen everybody perform. I met all kinds of superstars. And I witnessed something with my own eyes that nothing could take away from me. Nothing. And that was, the reason you do it is because you do it. If it's in you to do, you do it. You don't need to tell Etta James, you need to rehearse more. You don't need to tell B.B. King you need to rehearse more. I wouldn't be caught dead telling B.B. King he ever needed to rehearse again, but that's just me. A few years later, I want to say about 10 years later, 7 years later, Etta James had a comeback. She went through rehab. She was signed by Island Records. She put out a record called The 7-Year Itch that I think is the best R&B record ever made. I don't think anything that's ever been recorded can touch how good this record was. And it captured, well, even on the cover it had a big, fat, sweaty Etta James. It was amazing. And when this record came out, there was a push to get her old catalog out. And I finally listened to all that Etta James stuff. And I was like, no wonder I was not a big fan of Etta James. All this stuff is, well, it's white. It's sanitized. It's prettified. And it all sounds the same. The chick I saw was a force of nature. And this record captured it. And I was so excited. I brought a friend of mine to go see Etta James perform at the Roxy, which is a very cool club on Sunset Boulevard. And let me tell you, it may have been more than one hand, it may have been more than two hands, but I don't think outside of the entourage from Island Records, there were 15 people who bought tickets to that concert. And that was one of the best shows I had ever seen. If I thought she was good before, she was even better now. This was a great show. And that record flopped. And then the next one she did after that flopped. And she just didn't have success. Then she finally had some success singing the songs of Billie Holiday. She won a Grammy. She won a Grammy in a category where if you're Etta James and you record this kind of record, there's really no competition, basically. And I don't mean to take that away, but the reality is she did not have the career of a Diana Ross. And we all know why. We all know why. The minute I say that, no one's going, well, she wasn't as good a singer as Diana. Well, Diana Ross isn't a good singer. I'm a fan, but let's be fair here. No one grows up going, if only I could sing as good as Diana Ross. But she also didn't have the career of Aretha Franklin. And every young woman who wants to sing grows up saying, if I could sing like Aretha. Well, just so you know, only Kelly Clarkson can and everyone else can't. But, let's be fair. Look at Aretha's career. Very spotted. Very spotted. She was very fortunate in the 80s to have a hit song. She had a hit song in the 80s and made some money. But I'm related to the realtor who helped her sell her house the year before that she couldn't pay for. That's the reality. I remember getting that phone call going, you'll never believe whose house I'm selling. I said, you've got to be kidding. And he said, she is completely busted. She's completely busted. All she has left is her house. And it was a year or two later that she had a hit single. I was like, oh, she only held on to the house. But there is not a singer, alive or dead, that would ever say they sang better than Etta James. There's not a singer, alive or dead, that would make that claim. Think about that. Because, I don't know, there's a lot of people that I think sing a lot better than Barbra Streisand. And I love Diana Ross, but I think everybody sings better than Diana Ross. I'm just keeping it real. You know, you either like it or you don't, but you know, that's not really vocal prowess happening there. I think the only singer alive that would say they sing better than Etta James is Aretha Franklin. But let's be fair, she might, and she thinks that way about everybody. And by the way, I saw her in concert, and I could be really pissy and say the only reason she broke a sweat is because she sweats every time she walks, but I won't. I'll say she did not break a sweat singing. She did not break a sweat singing. It was a cold, miserable, rotten performance by an artist that has totally believed everything said about them, who thinks nothing about contributing to the bettering of their craft, compared to Etta James. Etta James. But back in the day, back in the early 80s, when I went and got on the phone, when I got home that night and called everybody I knew and said, you'll never believe who's playing to an empty room at Club Lingerie. I mean, my parents knew who she was, and all, you know, everybody but me, you know, was not surprised. And everybody said the same thing. Oh, she's a has-been. Oh, she's fat now. Oh, she can't sing good anymore. Oh, she had all those drug problems. Well, only one person attended her performance during those months that she was performing there. Only one person that I know came because of me. And he barely turned to even look at the stage. Spent the whole time at the bar, drinking and talking to the bartender. No interest whatsoever in Etta James. Little did I know that one day I would be doing what I do now. Little did I know. But God knew. And God gave me the training of a lifetime from all the things I've done and all the experiences I've had and all the artists I've known and all the things I've participated in and all the things I've watched. But there was one day where there was a specific lesson that I would begin learning about if there's only one person to receive from what you're doing, they're worth it. Because much like Aretha, my ego is enormous. So I know that if there were 1 million people in the room, I was the most important person in the room. But in this instance, there wasn't 1 million people. There really was just me. And I saw with my own eyes that I mattered, that the audience matters. Whether it's one person or 1 million people, they matter. Because you never know who that person is and what they're going to go on to do. And you never know what they're getting from you at that time. And a very young man got, no matter what you do, you just keep doing it. You keep sticking with it. You keep sticking with it because the tide will turn. And if it doesn't turn, that one person in the room matters.